This is Andi Purewal for Boxing News. I'm joined by trainer Tony Sims here in London. Tony, you've been in good spirits today. It's always good to see you. How is life treating you?
Yeah, great. And as you can see, we've got a busy gym today. There's a lot of sparring on going on, and there's a lot of big fights coming up from this stable.
A lot of big fights on the horizon, Tony. One of those being Jordan Thompson. It was a fight which caught everybody by surprise when it was announced, challenging Opetaia for his world title. Where did this fight come about, Tony? How long was the negotiation period?
Yeah, it come about when obviously Richard Riakporhe pulled out from his mandatory position against Opetaia, and Jordan Thompson being ranked number 8 with the IBF. We got a phone call, and it just fell at the right time for Jordan, because Jordan had just finished sparring a 6-week camp with Dempsey McKean, who's obviously a big southpaw, and it was like a week later after he'd finished sparring him, so he was already in brilliant condition. So he's had a really long camp for this fight, and the opportunity come along, and it's not every day you get a world title opportunity voluntary, and obviously in a perfect world you would have liked a world level opponent fight beforehand, but listen, he's took this opportunity with both hands, and I'm looking forward to the fight.
Tony, without that extra experience that other fighters have had in terms of building up their career towards world level, how much of a difference do you feel like that could make on the night, not having that extra guidance or experience up until a fight with somebody like Opetaia?
Yeah, obviously experience. You can't buy experience, and as I say, in a perfect world, I would like to have had him with a world-class fighter beforehand. But look, the opportunity's there. He's a 6'7" cruiserweight who punches extremely hard with both hands, so he's capable of upsetting anyone. And he's going into this fight in great condition, and he'll be extremely confident going into the fight.
Speaking to him downstairs, he was adamant that he's going in there with every intention of getting the stoppage victory. Do you feel like that's going to be a motive for him come fight night to really put the pressure onto Opetaia? And also, he's coming back from a serious jaw injury. Any doubts which might be in his mind, you want Jordan to kind of play on that, let him feel Jordan's power early on?
Yeah, sure. And anyone's had a jaw injury, I've had fighters with jaw injuries in the past, and it's always you're a little bit worried coming back into the ring. And as you say, Jordan Thompson's a big puncher, and he'll be looking for that to get him out of there. That's just the way he fights. And Opetaia is a good operator. He's a smart boxer, southpaw. It makes him awkward. Good amateur record. So it's going to be a difficult night. But as I say, if Jordan Thompson catches anyone in the cruiserweight division, he's capable of putting them away.
Just moving away from Jordan, obviously Cordina had his fight announced a couple of days ago now, I believe. Where did the fight come from?
Yeah, obviously Joe's allowed to have a voluntary defence, and we got offered Vazquez a couple of weeks ago. I watched him fight against Raymond Ford, and it's his only loss, and it was a bit controversial. I thought he might have got the decision at the end of that. So he's relatively an unbeaten fighter, really, and he's a tough Mexican, comes forward, bangs away. So yeah, we're expecting a tough fight, but Joe's got that little bit of class about him, and it's the first defence of his title, so I know he's looking forward to that. And Monte Carlo, he's boxed before against a Mexican, Tinoco, so he knows what it's all about over there. So yeah, he's just started his 8-week camp now, so he'll be in great condition on the night.
Is there any sense of frustration that maybe you couldn't get one of those unifications over the line? I know there was a lot of talk about the Foster fight.
Yeah, I think that we'll be looking at a unification fight or a big fight after this one. Obviously, all the other title belt holders was all busy doing their own defences and had their own fights penciled in. So it's just about keeping busy now with Joe, making this defence of the title, and then look for the big fights after this.
Tony, obviously away from him, we saw Conor today. He's back. He's sparring. There's a lot of talk about him potentially returning in Florida next week. He said it's most likely. Do you believe we'll see him out in Florida?
I hope so. If it ain't Florida, it'll be one of the cards coming up, and he's been keeping himself in good nick, and he there's big talk about the Eubank fight in December, so he needs to get out beforehand, and as we know, his ban's been lifted, so he can fight now, and it's just about getting him a warm-up fight really before we start negotiating for a big fight for him.
I did just want to obviously ask about that, Tony. We saw the National Anti-Doping Panel lifting that ban, but then obviously UKAD and the board appealing that decision. Does it mean that he's cleared to box, or has he been cleared of any wrongdoing or anything? What can you tell me about that?
Well, they're saying they're going to appeal. I don't really know whether that's going to happen or not, so that's how I can leave it there. So they're saying they're going to appeal, but as such, I don't think there's a lot happened at the minute. So as far as we're concerned, he can fight. The National Anti-Doping Body lifted his suspension and his ban, so he can fight. Whether the board and UKAD appeal, we'll see.
So have they actually not appealed it yet?
Not as far as I know. No, they've said they're going to appeal it, but not as far as I know.
On that note, then, Tony, if they haven't appealed it, I thought, is it not kind of the timing run out from when they was allowed to?
I think they can keep postponing the appeal. So we're not going to just wait around and wait until they want to postpone the appeal. So let's wait and see what happens anyway. But in the meantime, we're just going to get busy and do what he does best, and let's get in the ring and fight. He's been through two different processes of this, and he went against the VADA one with the WBC, and he's gone up against the UKAD one. So his suspension and ban's been lifted. So to me, that's the end of it, and he's going to fight now.
If obviously they continue to postpone it, is there again a time when they can't postpone their appeal process anymore?
I'm not really sure about all the process of it. I just hear, what's going on. So I'm not sure. It's a thing that you'd have to speak to lawyers about, and I'm not quite sure about all that. But that's what I'm hearing now anyway, is that they're putting the appeal back.
How does Conor feel about it all?
He just wants to get on with his career and fight now, which he will do, and that's what he is. He's a fighter. He's been in the gym the whole time. He just wants to fight and get the biggest and best fights that he can do.
Obviously, looking at his return and his comeback, and just opponents which have been mentioned. I saw Ivan Redkach was mentioned, and then he's come out saying that he was somewhat lowballed with an offer. Conor will be a money man and a money fight for anybody who steps in the ring with him. Are you having difficulties finding somebody who will take the fight, or is it more so difficult to try and get them to agree to the financial side?
I don't get involved in that, Andy. You know what I mean? That's with Matchroom and the matchmakers. I don't get involved what the opponent's doing, or who the opponent is, or how much he's getting paid. So we'll just see.
Can I ask if you know of anybody who's in the running for Conor's return fight?
No, I'm just waiting to hear. Hopefully I'll hear today or tomorrow what opponent he'll be fighting against, but obviously the date ain't set either yet, so I'm not sure whether we're on the Florida bill or one of them cards coming up, so we'll see.
Do you think there might be any more critics if he was to go and fight in Florida with all of this still going on with the board, instead of dealing with this first, or do you not think that this will be dealt with the board anytime soon?
I can't really answer that really. I mean, he's licensed to fight, so he's going to fight. Can't just keep hanging around and waiting to see what the board want to do or what everybody else wants to do. He's licensed to fight. He's gonna fight, and because that's what he is. He's a fighter, and I don't really know.
And just, you mentioned Chris Eubank Jr. Obviously, he reversed the first result against Liam Smith recently with a stoppage victory. What did you make of Chris's performance in that fight?
Yeah, Chris boxed well, and he looked in a lot better condition than he did the first time. And mentally, he looked like he was there. And but then on the other hand, Smith looked dreadful. He looked like he was carrying injuries. He looked like he hadn't trained like he did on the first fight. He couldn't put any punches together at all. So, you know, it was a strange fight. Like the first fight, I felt like Smith come into the ring, you know, in the right condition mentally and physically, and perhaps Eubank never. And on the second fight, it was reversed. So it's hard to say really who was the better fighter, because it was a tale of two fights. So I don't know really, but obviously Eubank looked good in what he needed to do, and he got the job done, and he overcome, like, being knocked out is obviously a big thing mentally, and he overcome that and got the KO himself.
Given kind of what's gone on in this last year or so since the fight with Conor was postponed or cancelled at the time in October, I know obviously you won't be happy with everything that's happened since and with Conor's failed test, but is it bigger now because of what's happened on Conor's side, and because Junior coming back with a knockout victory against the man who recently beat him? Is the fight bigger now between Chris and Conor?
Oh, I think it's bigger than ever now, because I think beforehand it was more of their dad's rivalry than the son's rivalry. But I think now there's proper dislike between them both. It's more personal now. I know that Conor, you know, dislikes him immensely, because all Eubank's done is give him stick the whole way through. So, and there was things that happened in the build-up to the other fight that people don't know that went on. So I think there's a proper disdain now between both of them. So he's a proper grudge fight now, like both the dads was.
Conor said after his performance against Liam Smith in the rematch, he wasn't impressed by what Junior showed. Was you impressed, or did you see the holes which might be there for Conor to exploit?
I was just saying, it was like a tale of two fights. So I think I'd like to have seen a peak Smith in with a peak Eubank, and then you could sort of say, you know, how the performance was. But it was hard to say really, because I've never seen Smith that bad before. And we know he's a good fighter, so I don't really know what happened in his camp. But, you know, fair play to Eubank. He looked good in the fight and done what he had to do.
Tony, what's the latest with Mr. John Ryder?
Yeah, John Ryder, we was chasing the Golovkin fight, but I don't think Golovkin's going to fight anymore. So there's a couple of big names in the running now for him, and I think he'll probably be fighting December in America. Against a big name. I know negotiations are going on at the minute, so I believe a big fight will happen in December for him.
Would that be a headline fight, or could he possibly be on the Bam Rodriguez and Sonny Edwards card?
Oh no, this would be a big headline fight, yeah. So this will be a top liner, and it'll probably be like a final eliminator for Canelo's title again. So yeah, so he could be mandatory again if he comes through.
Fancy yourself second time round?
I wouldn't fancy going to Mexico and doing it again.
Tony, just with Canelo, obviously he's getting ready for the Charlo fight, one which caught everybody by surprise. The brother who fights at 154, stepping up 2 weights. How do you see Canelo Charlo playing out on the same day as Jordan versus Joe?
Yeah, I thought it was strange that the 160 Charlo never got offered or took the fight. It's really strange. Is he the one who's been out for 2 years? Who's the one who's been out for 2 years?
The one who fights at 160.
Yeah, so strange, isn't it? Well, I wonder why he's been out for 2 years as well. Anyway, yeah, I think Canelo would be too strong for him, to be honest. He's a good fighter, Canelo, and people say that he's not the fighter he was, but he's still got really fast hands. He's changed his defence over the years to putting pressure on you with his gloves up high. He puts you under pressure and he waits for you to make a mistake, and he hits you with a quick counter shots. So and he's very strong and he punches hard. So I think Charlo will be in the fight in the early rounds, but I think he'll wear him down and knock him out eventually.
Tony, next weekend you've got Zhang-Joyce versus Zhang-Joyce 2, the rematch. Do you think Joe will reverse the result of the first fight?
Not sure really whether he'll reverse that fight, because I just think Zhang had his number that night, and he couldn't really get out of the way of his backhand, and I just don't know whether Joe can make them adjustments to change his game plan. I hope he does, because I like Joe. He's a nice fella and he's a good guy, but I don't know really. I think Zhang is a really good fighter. He's underrated as well. If you watch him against Ergovic, he looked really good in that fight as well. And you know, I think he's a real threat to anyone. Zhang, he can bang. He's got fast hands, and he's obviously a massive geezer. So I think it's going to be an hard night's work for Joyce. But as I say, I hope he comes through.
Tony, just one to swing back to with regards to your guys. If Conor does fight next weekend, obviously Jordan fights the week after. Joe's got his fight date announced now. Have you thought about the logistics of whether or not they'll come out with you to train in Florida? Will they stay here because of the time difference, especially with Jordan's fight being the week after?
You know, they'll stay here with Kevin Mitchell. You know, he's my assistant trainer, so you know he's in the gym with me day in, day out. So he knows what we're doing, and they'll just stay here. No, I wouldn't take neither one of them with me.
And then Tony, just a final one. Wood-Warrington on the 7th. How do you think that one plays out?
Well, that's going to be a great fight. You know, I'm really looking forward to that fight, and I know Lee Wood pretty well, and he's a good fighter. He's a nice fella, and he's a good fighter, and Warrington's a good fighter. So I don't know. It's a 50-50 fight. That I'm hoping Lee Wood just does it at the end. So I'm just going to tip to Lee Wood.
Obviously, in the past, I know Eddie's mentioned the winner of that fight potentially coming up to face Joe. I asked him this question. I'm going to ask you as well, Tony. If you was to answer this, or you was in Joe's position, you had the chance to fight the winner of Wood-Warrington at the Cardiff City Stadium, or fight in a unification and headline in Las Vegas. Which way would you like to see him go?
I think that'd be a decision probably for Joe to make, but I think at Joe's stage of his career now, it's all about the money. So wherever the money is, I think I would advise Joe to go wherever the money is. Like if the money's much larger for the Wood-Warrington winner, you know, than the Las Vegas fight, I would advise him to take that. Right,
Tony, it's a pleasure as always. Now I'm going to leave you to enjoy the rest of your day. I know you've got to shoot off, so you've very quickly done me. So thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for coming.